Welcome to Business on the Vine. I'm your host, Lady Jen Du Plessis, and in this dynamic series, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and victories of entrepreneurs who have turned their passion into success. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Business on the Vine. I'm your host, Lady Jen Du Plessis, Dame Commander. Now I've got this long thing I have to say. We are happy to have you here today. And my special guest today is Stacey Brown Randall. And are you a three-peater? You
Yeah,
might be three times.
I think so.
Yeah. So I had you on Mortgage Lending Mastery, and then I think I had you on Mortgage Lending Mastery, and I do something called Beyond the Podcast. So you might be four times, because Beyond the Podcast is just where we find out where are you now. So you'll be on that a year from now.
Which will be great. I can be a
Yeah.
five-peater.
Yeah, a five-peater. Yeah, whatever they call it. Yeah, it'll be
Right.
really good. But the topic that you have is just so near and dear to my heart, as you know. So let me just introduce you formally. She is the author of the new book, The Referral Client Experience, the award-winning book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, which I have over there. Because I love looking at it without manipulating, incentivizing, and or even asking. She's been featured in national publications like Entrepreneur Magazine, Investor Business Daily, Forbes, and more. She received her master's degree in organizational communication as married with three kids. So there's the formal introduction, but this is the thing I know about Stacey that I love just sharing is that she's such a giver. We cross paths every once in a while. We comment on each other's posts here and there. We don't have this conversation, but when we got in the green room today, we're like, hey, what's up? Like we've been old friends. So I love being able to feel that way. And hopefully you feel that way too. And this stems from, keeping and honing in and focusing on creating relationships that become the center for everything you do. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that for you as well, like it's such a gift for me to have the opportunity to come back on multiple times, but to share what I do with your audience. And of course, referrals, which is my main area of expertise, it completely revolves around relationships and understanding that and the importance of them and being a giver. I always tell folks, Bob Berg did not get it wrong. He got it right when he wrote givers receive. And so I think it's always important to kind of be paying attention to that. So I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, I'm going to disrupt things right away. You just said something. So we know about the book by Ivan Misner, called the founder of BNI, saying "Givers Gain." You just said "Givers Receive." Let's disrupt this a little bit because I know that someone might be listening and say, "Well, I'm giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, and I don't ever receive." Where's the block for that?
Oh, well, there's two.
I know that's a loaded question.
There is like part of me is like, oh, are people ready to actually hear the answer to that? Because it's important.
Well,
Here's the
we
thing.
can open loop that and we can bring it back if you want.
Yeah, no, I think it's important for people to recognize it's happening. It's not just one thing, it's usually two things. And that's what people have to pay attention to. And I see this sometimes with my clients too, right? When you get to a point where you feel like you're giving and giving and giving, what you're actually doing. So there's the mindset piece of this, and then there's actually the practical, tactical, what you're actually doing and
Mhm.
how that's showing up. And so those are two different things, but they both matter and they both will block feeling like you're receiving if you're in the place of feeling like you're giving, giving, giving. So, I always tell my clients, like when we are trying to cultivate new people to start referring to us, you have to be willing to give, and you may be giving and helping them and staying in front of them and staying connected to them with receiving nothing. And that may
That's
go on
part of the
for a
process.
year. Right?
Yeah.
It may
Yeah.
go on for a year or longer. I mean, I've got some great stories from clients that like cultivated new people and then got huge referrals from them, but it took 18 months, right?
Right.
Of them
Right. That's part of the
cultivating.
process.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's part of the
Yeah.
process. So, but when I tell folks is that if you go into this thinking, I'm giving, 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 when do I receive? You're white knuckling the
Hmm.
whole experience. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm going to white knuckle it. I'm going to make this happen. I see this with my clients too. They'll be like, well, I'm doing these touch points you told me to do, and now I'm waiting on my referrals. I'm like, you just you just cut off the whole process at its
Right.
knees
Right.
with your expectations. And that really does come from your mindset and your beliefs, right? And that idea of like the fact that you can give without expecting in return is really hard for some people. But that's actually what you, and on some areas, what you have to do. Because you, even though you're giving to somebody, if you expect to receive right back from that person, you're looking at it all wrong. You give, and then we know it'll come back. We just don't know exactly from whom and exactly on what timetable. And you've got to trust that process. And that is hard for people. The
Yeah.
other thing I would say, but that's like in your head, right? That's the
Right.
mental
Right.
stuff we have
That's
to
the
understand.
mindset piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's mindset and all those pieces.
Yeah.
The other piece is like you may actually just be like, there's potential if you're giving, 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 you may be doing it wrong. Like, and that's the other thing, and that's the practical, tactical area of that it may be who you're spending time with, right? Who you're giving to. Do they ever have the opportunity to become a client of yours or to refer clients to you? Being strategic
Mhm.
about who you're trying to get referrals from is like the first step before you ever worry about what you're going to do to get referrals from them. And so it could be that you're doing it wrong in terms of you're not actually spending time in the right places. You're not actually cultivating the right relationships, right? It could be how you're showing up. Like some people show up and they're like, I'm giving. And I'm like, really? Because I feel like all you're doing is taking. And they don't even realize sometimes
Yeah.
that what they view as giving
Right.
actually isn't viewed that way by other people. And
Mhm.
so it comes more from listening and paying
Right. Right.
attention than it does trying to like have like a three-step thing you're trying to follow every time you have a conversation.
Right, right. Well, and definitely the law of reciprocation is there. There's no doubt about it. So people already know when you give. And by the way, we're talking about, let's be clear about this too. We're talking not only about referrals, but we're talking about connections to people who could give us more referrals, right? So these are connections too. But the law of reciprocation, people naturally have that law of reciprocation, like what could I give them? And if we're not giving them the tools, the words, which you're going to talk about here in a minute, the words, the right scripts, and I shouldn't say scripts, but just the right words where we're planting the correct seeds, then they don't know that we are looking for referrals. It's just my girlfriend has this phrase. I've said it on this show before, but expectations without agreement creates blank, frustration, resentment, anger, right? Expectations without agreement. And we have to have an agreement. And so if we're willing to give and connect and refer, and we haven't said something about that, right, to them, then again, I said that a few minutes ago. The law of reciprocation is I want to help, I want to give back. I don't know, but I don't know what to do because you haven't said anything. So what are some things that you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that people have to realize is that you have to earn the right for people to actually give back to you. And I think that's hard for people to hear because usually people wake up and they think, "Okay, I need more clients in my business. I got to solve this problem in my business." And they think about themselves and then they go about their day thinking about, I need clients, I need this, I need that, right? And so that kind of starts creating this expectation of when we're having conversations and relationships and meetings and stuff with other people that if I'm giving to you, you should be giving to me because at the root of everything you're thinking about are your own problems.
Yes.
And so it's
Mhm.
really hard for people to step away from that and be like, you know what? I'm going to step out from my own problems and I'm going to focus and on the other person. I'm going to listen to what they need. And you mentioned the law of reciprocity. So this is a part of understanding the science behind how referrals work. And it is a part of behavioral economics that we use when we are building out our frameworks for generating referrals, like the frameworks our clients follow. But there's a very fine line with manipulation when it comes to
Mhm.
the law of reciprocity. And there are people who will teach you to be manipulative with the law of reciprocity. Like, hey, you do something for someone because you know it will put them in a position to do something back for you. At the moment you go into a conversation, a relationship, a connection with that mindset, you've already killed it. Right? It already doesn't exist because I can start to feel it from the person I'm having a conversation with if there's
Mhm.
some underlying expectation. If you come in truly from a place of, I'm going to show up differently and truly be about this conversation about helping you, because I know if I help you, you will remember that. And that
Mhm.
will feed how you feel about me. And then
Yeah.
if I'm able to impact how you feel about me, like, hey, I show up, I do things for you, I've asked nothing in return, right? I'm not expecting you to give me anything. I'm not saying, hey, if I'm going to do this, you got to do that. I don't lead from that place, right? Then the law of reciprocity can kick in on its own.
Yeah.
And not every person will feel like you can do something for someone, they can be like, yeah, thanks, and walk off and completely forget it. I mean, there are people like that in the
Right.
world, right?
Well,
Like
and
it
some people
happens.
aren't part of referral, right? They've never referred. I know when I was in BNI, one of the questions we started asking people is, hey, have you referred to people in the past? Because you're expected to, and this is BNI, it's
Yeah,
a
of
vacuum,
course.
but you're expected to refer. Have you ever done that? And we realized that we were bringing people on that we wanted the chair filled and the human being and the breathing on the mirror. We wanted the person, but we realized they'd never been taught how to think or, give back or refer. They've never done it. They've just only received referrals. And so they weren't a good match. So I think that's part of the process of just understanding and learning about your partners. Are they people who want to refer? And then we'll talk about clients here in a second, but let's step back for a second because I want to talk about your business.
Yeah.
you know so where did you learn this and why did you start a business based on this?
Yeah, so I learned everything that I teach my clients today, going on 12 years now, from the School of Hard Knocks. So I had a business that was in a human resource consultancy. I had big name clients like Ally Bank and KPMG, one of the larger accounting firms. And my business failed after 4 years. It did not quite make it to the 5 year mark. I became part of the 85% of small businesses that
Mhm.
fail before they reach the 5 year mark. I picked up my badge in the Business Failure Club, and I am a member of that club. And then I had to go back to corporate. And while in corporate, I got certified as a productivity coach because I was okay. So I got my certification as a productivity coach, and that was always going to be my exit strategy. That's how I was leaving corporate. I went back out on my own. I was like, okay, can't fail again. Don't need to be a two-timer in the Business Failure Club. And so I started paying attention to some of the things that had worked and then some of the things that were not sustainable, and started looking for other options. And what I realized is I never got any referrals with my HR consulting firm. Like, I landed some big name clients by being in the right place at the right time, and we both know being at the right place at the right time means you're at all the places all the time. And as an
Right.
exhausting way to grow a business. And so I started
Hustle.
paying attention to referrals. And then I realized, God, every way they teach you to generate referrals is awful. Like, that was my opinion. It was like, I don't want to ask. I don't want to have to compensate and do a kickback. I don't want to have to be promotionally gimmicky and put in my email signature, the greatest compliment you can give me is a referral. I don't want to have to network all the time and show up to every group possible. I mean, I've got 3 kids, like, and I want to stay married. So, like, I'm looking at all that and I'm like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. Why isn't there a different way? I didn't know that there was a different way. I just started throwing spaghetti on the wall, and I started receiving referrals. And I got 112 in my first year as a productivity coach. And I was like, oh, there's something to this. And my clients, who were small business owners, started saying, thanks for teaching me how to tame my inbox, but I'd rather learn your referral strategy, which forced me to reverse engineer what I was doing. And then I realized, of course, there's patterns and there's things, right? Those became strategies that I started teaching to my clients. And that was 12 years ago now. And
Yeah.
it's the sole focus of what I do, is really focusing on generating referrals and showing people that it is possible to generate referrals from folks with a level of consistency. Maybe not like every single day knowing what's happening consistency, but on a quarterly or twice a year or an annual basis, having some consistency to your referrals by understanding the science behind referrals and making sure you're cultivating the right types of relationships in the right way. So there's a framework, there's a methodology, there's 20 different strategies that I teach my client. There's knowing what to say when things happen and having plans that run in your business. So it's not like, oh, I don't have to ask, I do nothing and they'll just show up. They're not going to magically appear. There is a process, there is work to do. But I learned everything I learned because I was just trying to not have another business failure. And that changed everything about the trajectory of what I do.
Yeah, yeah. And I know one of the gifts that you're going to give to those that are listening is a very great chapter of your book that they can download. So I wanted to bring that in because we've talked about your book and so many people just give a little, fun chapter of their book. You're going to give them a really great chapter of their book on some of these tactics and skills. So when you started your business, you obviously had that fear of, could I fail again? What are some of the things that I looked at when you looked at the previous business and not just about referrals, because businesses fail for a plethora of reasons.
Lots of reasons.
Right. A plethora. And for you, you honed in on the referral piece of it. What were some of the other attributes of what created that? I don't like the word failure, but anyway, what created that failure for those businesses, so that someone who's listening here says, I'm afraid too, because I'm going to go back in. But what did you discover about, hey, it wasn't only just referrals, that I was doing all the work myself. I could really cultivate a community that would be, feeding me, bird dogging for me and feeding me opportunities. But what else did you discover about your business that you would like
so
to?
there were three main lessons that came out of my business failure. The third lesson is actually the referral lesson, which is touching business development every day and having a process and a system in place that you'll do because you enjoy it, right? So cold calling was never going to be it for me, and that's where referrals became the thing. But
that's why I love you. That's why we talked about that in the very first one. We hate cold calling, and it's
awful.
necessary. It's just not necessary.
It's not. And there's still companies who make people do it today. Like, it's just terrible. But, so that was the third lesson. But the first two lessons, so I always say, referrals, that lesson that I learned about touching business development every day, and that became the referral piece that I teach, right? It's a very practical, tactical. There's a lot to it that have helped my business survive. But I wouldn't say it was necessarily the most important lesson that I learned in my business failure. The other two are actually more important. The third one feels important because it's tactical, practical, and you take action. The first two is a little bit different, but the first one was protecting my mindset.
Yeah.
So early on in my business, okay, so this is what's interesting that most people don't know, is that I left my when I first left corporate, and right before I started my first business, I spent a little less than a year in a partnership with two other partners, a married couple that owned a company. And I came in as a third partner to grow an area of the business. And I was 4 weeks pregnant and didn't know it.
Oh, wow.
I don't really recommend that. I mean, if you can avoid that, I don't really recommend that.
How would you do it? Yeah.
Right. I just probably wouldn't have been pregnant. That would have been great. But I didn't know I was pregnant, very quickly found out I was pregnant. It was kind of nice because it gave me some freedom, but at the same time, it was terrifying. So it was easy to go into this partnership with these other two folks. A year into it, I had a client that I had brought into this partnership that said, hey, this piece that you do, you really can do it on your own for 100% versus 30%. And I was like, you're right. And so I started my own business. And I think my son was 4 months old at that point, something crazy. Again, I mean, do it if you got to, but not ideal. And so for me, I was growing a business while I was starting to have my babies. So my son was 4 months, and then, less than 2 years later, then comes my daughter along. And there were people in my life that would talk about me as I was growing my business and I wanted to be successful, but I kept hearing messages like, well, you have a business on the side of having your babies and being a mom. And I bought into it. And when you buy into that, it's okay to go do laundry at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
to avoid the business.
and not because I worked for 7 hours and now I'm going to go do laundry, but it was an avoidance tactic.
Right. Avoiding. Yeah.
And I bought right into it. I was like, that's right. Businesses like mine, we're lifestyle. I hate that word now, but we're lifestyle business. I don't win awards and I don't make a ton of money. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But I believed it back in the day. Right. We're talking back in 2009, forever ago. And so from that perspective, the mindset, me protecting it, me working on it, me looking outside just the what I and I've gotten much better about this now in the decades since then, of really paying attention to, okay, when I see other people doing other things, I get really good really fast at putting that in context.
Yeah, because competition is the thief of joy.
Yes, it is. And sometimes, I'll have conversations with people, and this is no disrespect to any of your listeners that are guys, but I'll have a conversation with a guy and they'll be talking about, yeah, I mean, you should be able to do this in your business and this in your business and this in your business. And I'm like, so does your partner work?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, stays at home. I would do amazing things too if I had a stay-at-home wife as well.
Right.
It's just that ability to pay attention to your world is different and you want different things. And I'm very clear on what I want. And it's different and it doesn't have to match your definition of success. The second lesson was that you cannot scale when you are drowning. And for 4 years, I was drowning, not believing that I was, and trying to also scale a business, which meant I funneled money into things that were never ultimately going to work.
Yeah,
And that
thank
was
you
a really hard lesson.
for that. Yeah, that because that's my specialty.
Yep.
Right? Scaling businesses. Yeah, I love that. So listen carefully when you hear that, right? Is number one, we need to get our mindset in check. And I think that it's also creating a bubble around what we can do. We don't have infinite time, infinite energy. So what can you do in your business that can move the needle forward, not what somebody else is doing in their business to move the needle forward. I think that's, super, super, super. I love that one. Okay, so I want to talk about I just want to talk about a lot of things. It's interesting that you're using client experience, and I honestly just don't remember you using the words client experience. Maybe this is new. I have not used client service or customer service in decades. Because, and I use CX all the time too. It's how you make the client feel. So let's talk a little bit about great work versus getting referrals, because everyone makes the claim, hey, we're going to take care of you, we provide great customer service, we're going to do things on time, you're going to get the results that you need. Well, everyone is striving to do that. They're missing, it's like looking at an ant when the big semi goes by, right? They're missing this emotional impact that happens. And I know this because of all the referrals that I've gotten in my career, right? It is that emotional impact on it. So speak to that a little bit about what that client experience and how that's filling the gap, because I want to create a rotation of referrals, right? That they're compelled to refer because of how they felt working with me or you as you're listening. So give us a breakdown on that.
Yeah, so this book, my second book, The Referable Client Experience, it is only dedicated and dealing with getting referrals from clients. Of course, it's not the only group of humans that will ultimately end up referring you, right? I mean,
Right,
my
right.
first book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, which I was on your podcast before about, is actually if you already have people referring to you, here's how we generate more referrals from them. And that isn't going to only be clients. It can also be centers of influence and contacts and things like that. But
Right.
when you think about it from a client experience perspective, it is different because
Yes.
these people are actually working with you. And, when I started writing this book, and I'm embarrassed to say I started writing this book like pre-COVID, so like 2019, took forever to get
Well,
it
you've been
self-published.
busy. You've
I
been
mean,
busy.
yes, that's a nice excuse because that's ultimately what it was. I used COVID as an excuse way longer than it was like allowed to not get something done. But it just took time. But I had to go back and I had to redo some research on how we define client experience in particular. And it was funny in 2019, 2020, when I'm first writing this book, there isn't a definitive answer. There isn't like everybody says the definition of client experience is this. There were lots of people calling it lots of different things. And in 5 years, right, when I'm starting writing this book last year, to finish it up, I'm like, oh, wow, everybody's kind of on board with the same definition, which had been the definition I'd always used, which is the exact same one you used, which is the client experience is not the work that you do for your client. It is how the client feels when working with you. And what people miss about that is they believe the feelings are driven by the work that they do for their clients or the results that they get for their clients. But
Yeah.
that is only one piece of that emotional load that actually a client has. The other piece is the relationship that you build with them and the connections that you have with your clients, and not connections and relationship like you take every client to coffee 14 times. Nobody's got time for that. But you're a so when you think about how a client feels, yes, the work matters, but also the relationship that you build with them. And that is a main piece that I find that people miss. They're like, I do great work. And I'm like, awesome. Are you drowning in referrals? And they're like, no. I'm like, yeah, because doing great work doesn't equate to referrals. And a lot of people believe, like when I ask them, like, so tell me about your client experience, they'll say, oh, well, we are great when there's a problem and we have a great customer service, like our outreach. And when people have questions, we're always there to answer them. I'm like, customer service is like one small piece of client experience overall. It's more than the work you do. It is also the relationships you feel. And that's really important for people to keep in mind. And one of the things we talk about in the book. And until you have both those pieces of the formula, the work you do, and the relationship you build, you can't have a referable client experience. And so first I tell my clients, and this is what we talk about in the book, focus first on building that referable client experience where you're focused on the stages and you're paying attention to, of course, how they feel and your relationship that you're building with them in addition to the work that you're doing. And then we can bridge the gap to referrals, but you have to build them in the right order.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because one of the things, we have like 117 different actions that we take in our sales process. Okay, so everybody's got a sales process. You have this in your business, this sales process, and we're going to talk about the 3 steps here in a minute. But we have this in the sales process, and 117 steps. But guess what? A plethora of those steps are reaching out to the client with unexpected surprises, unexpected gives, touch bases, midstream check-ins to ensure that we're serving them properly so that we can make course correction, because a lot of people wait till the end and they say, hey, was it good? And, can you refer people to me? Right. And I know you have something to say about that too, but they wait till the end. And if there's course correction that needs to be done, I want some time in my process to be able to rectify that so that I can get great referrals, right? So let's talk about the new and the active, the in process, I call that, and the alumni, which I call people alumni. I think, if there's a past client that passed away, I think PASSED. Not PAST. We close business and we close the casket on the relationship, and then we go, well, let's go look for more new people, right? So let's talk about the new, active, and alumni and some of the examples that you could give to those that are listening that are in the business of just saying, well, I do really good work. What are some examples of things that you could pop up and say, oh, you could do this or you could do that to make the experience better?
So here's the first thing I would tell folks is the first thing you hear when we start talking about things you could do is an overload of all the things you want to do. And
Yes.
really, when I teach my clients how to build their referable client experience, I'm like, hey, it's usually about every like 20%, 30% are going to be relationship building touch points, and the rest are going to be the work touch points that you do. So like, let's just say in your new client stage, when you're bringing somebody, they said yes to working with you, the client experience starts, they're in the new client stage. And maybe for you, that's 30 days, maybe it's till they get to a certain point. You get to determine when those stages start and stop.
Right.
But for the new client stage, right? If we are in this new client stage and you have 10 work touch points that you do for sake of argument, then you're probably going to have maybe 1 or 2 actual relationship building touch points. But here's the thing. This isn't just like they're new, let's send them a bottle of champagne. Right? Like this isn't like willy-nilly like things you can do that will like create like oh, that was cool kind of moment. This is actually paying attention to what it really looks like when you lean into what your clients are experiencing in each of your stages. So some common pitfalls that I find that people miss that should not be things that you're missing is when a client is new, you have to pay attention to what they're not saying to you. And I call this the quiet voice, right? They've said yes to working with you. They are excited, but they are also nervous. And that nervousness may last for a brief moment, or it may last for the entire time they're new, where in their heads, they're constantly saying to themselves, is this going to work? Did I make the right choice? Will I get the results I want? Am I going to waste my money? And they're going to be thinking that. And any kind of hiccup through the process, right, is going to amplify that feeling in them. And when someone decides to work with you, you have to address what they're not saying to you. So you have to learn to address the quiet voice. One of the best relationship-based touch points you can do in the new client stage is addressing that quiet voice. And you can do that as simply through a handwritten card. So instead of saying, I'm so glad you're a client, thanks for joining our team, right? Which is, let's be honest, all about you. Because it's like you've now got money. You're going to make money on this client. Why don't you say whatever it is that they may be concerned about? So when I was a productivity coach, I knew that when clients said yes to working with me, they were going to pay technically to sometimes feel tortured, because they were going to have to do things that were going to stretch them and challenge them and make different decisions. So the card I always wrote to them was acknowledging that. I'm
Mhm.
so glad we have the opportunity to work together. I know through this journey of working with me, it's going to stretch and challenge you, and it's going to be hard at times. But just remember, you're not alone. I'm
Mm.
your co-pilot, and you are fully supported through this journey. When
Yeah.
you take what they're thinking and not saying, you normalize it. Like, oh, I'm supposed to feel this way. This isn't anything wrong with Stacey and her process. I'm supposed to be concerned about this. Like this is normal. When you label it and name it, you normalize it. So putting that in a card makes that client feel like, okay, she sees me.
She sees me.
This
I'm
is
like,
great.
yeah, yeah, they get me. They
They
get
get
me.
me. And that's the relationship I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like, hey, here's a gift. I mean, you could do a welcome gift, but that messaging still needs to be the same. But the get that my thing about it is like this isn't like willy-nilly, let's just throw in some fun little surprises. It's like what do they need in that moment that is beyond the work, that is more relationship building in nature.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because when I was mentioning about, the midstream check-in, I may have had a different name for it, but that check-in, and I know you're going to talk about active here in a minute, but that specific check-in was what's keeping you up at night? What's happening right now? What are we not providing? What are we and it was a phone call because it was, what can we do so that we can give you some relief as we're in the middle of this, right?
Mhm.
And so you're going to have something to say about it too, but it was like, oh, I'm so glad. Now, remember, I was in the mortgage business. I still do it now, but when I'm specifically talking about that call, it was, uh, it was. I don't. You know what? I can't find a moving van. Everybody's moving at the end of the month, and I can't find a moving van. Right? Hey, I got you. I have other partners. I have partners. We got you. We're going to do it. And then I pick up the phone and call my partner and say, I need a moving van for my client because they're stressed about this. These
Mhm.
little, and this is what I'm talking about, unexpected surprises, because then I said, hey, guess what? I found you a moving van. Oh, thank goodness you took that pressure off me, right?
Yep.
So that's what I mean by that. I'm just sharing because we're kind of bouncing back and forth here on
Yeah.
the conversation. But let's talk about the active piece. Let's get one example in active and let's get one example in alumni so that the business owners that are listening can say, oh, this is how I'm going to scale my business, grow my business. It doesn't have to be a new hire, it doesn't have to be advertising. This is a great way that I could be growing my business.
Yeah, I mean, really intentional about that. And,
Mhm.
I always tell folks when we put something into practice, we're not just going to like do it once when we're not busy for those clients. It
Oh,
has to be
no.
that repeatable practice that we
Okay,
now do
let's talk about
every
that.
client.
Why? I know why, but talk about it. Why
Oh my,
does it have to be repeatable?
it has to be, which means the language I wrote in that card was the same language for every client. It was still real. It didn't detract from the realness of what they were feeling because I knew all of my clients felt that way when they started with me, right? And
Right.
so that became the repeatable piece of it was like, I'm going to write this card, but it's going to be the same language. I don't have to think about a brand new card every time I'm bringing on a new client, but a repeatable client experience, one that you can do consistently, right? That's where you're actually going to save time. And that's where you're actually going to be able to hone in all your processes and really tighten things up. But also, you don't miss opportunities to really be able to percolate the idea of that client feeling differently and being able to bridge that gap to referrals in the future. And so, it's really important for people to recognize this isn't stuff we do just because we have time. These are things we do regardless, and we do it
Right.
for every client.
It's a
So,
non-negotiable.
it is a not, it's just like you sending out the letter of agreement for them to sign that they're going to pay you or sending out an invoice. Like it's the same thing. It is as important as that.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the active stage, every business is a little bit different. And this is when I tell folks you have to get really clear on when you are done with the new stage and you've now determined that your clients are entering into the active stage. It's typically not a date on the calendar. It's typically they hit this milestone and now we've decided as the business owner, you're now an active. You don't tell this to your clients, but they've moved into the active stage. This is where usually the majority of the work happens. And this
Mhm.
is also where your client typically is sitting, not knowing that you're behind the scenes doing all this work. And so,
Right.
like you said, right, having check in calls are great, but it's also paying attention to is there anything else that you can do to kind of meet them where they are in that
Mhm.
moment? And
Right.
I always tell folks in the active stage, that is where you, as the business owner, are going to be lulled into complacency. And
Mhm.
you have to overcome that. You have to fight that. Be like, wait, I'm doing all the work. They're got to be happy because I'm doing all the work. They have no idea what you're doing. Right. And so you're trying to move things
Which is a
along.
detriment, right? They need to know what you're doing.
Yeah. So it's some of it's just communication and the
Mhm.
expectations. And we talk about that in the book about managing expectations and how you do check-ins. But something that really pushes the relationship forward is acknowledging to them, we know you're playing the waiting game. So
Mhm.
just showing up in ways that lets them know, hey, we know you're playing the waiting game. So like one example that I think most people can kind of wrap their heads around is think about like working with an interior designer, right? An interior designer comes in and they're like going to redo your kitchen. And there's a point in the active stage where you can no longer step into your kitchen and make food. Like we all
Right.
know that happens when we renovate
Waiting
a kitchen.
for materials. Yeah.
Right, because there's the construction is happening, all the things are happening, and now you're in this waiting game. Like you see it happening. Sometimes the contractors show up, and sometimes they don't, and it's taking forever. And every interior designer knows that's happening. That's going to happen,
So
right?
say something.
Right. So do something about it. So maybe if that is like a 6 week period, there's one touch point you're going to do that's going to be like, hey, we know things are crazy and chaotic for you right now. Here is a gift card. Go have dinner on us. Right.
Mhm.
Like we know this is what's happening. Hey, we just want to give your family a break for tonight. Take the night off. Go have dinner on us. Right. And it's just that, like, oh God, they see me again. They get it. They know this is what we're experiencing. They're not trying to hide from it.
Yeah,
Right.
I love this. I love this because, this is important for business owners to really understand is that you know how the process goes. So why would you wait for a client to call you and go, I haven't heard from you. What's going on? You guys, all of a sudden you're not there anymore and you have my money, right? You're depositing or withdrawing from that trust account all the time. Why would you not want to do it? And by the way, that phone call is now, you've got to defend yourself. It takes 20 minutes. A quick note, a quick phone call, as Stacey's recommending here, is 1 minute and has super impact.
Yep. And
Yeah,
so those check-in calls, they have to be part of the checklist, but so is deciding hey, when they hit this point, this is how we make something repeatable, right? When they
right.
hit this point, then this is going to be triggered, which is the sending of the gift card to tell them that dinner's on off,
Yeah,
dinner's on us, or whatever it may
yes,
be,
of
right?
course. Yeah,
So you have to spend some time thinking through, like, again, this is what I say. People are like, well, just send champagne. I'm like, for what purpose? Like,
yeah.
send champagne maybe when the job is over and that touch point makes sense, but I don't know
Mhm.
how much sense it makes in the middle when you're trying to overcome what they feel is the waiting game. Like you've got to think through what your
Yeah,
clients are experiencing. And this is what I always tell clients. Like I don't work well with clients who are like, just tell me what I'm supposed to do that you've told every other client to do and just give me your carbon copy ideas that have just been done for someone else. I'm like, no, you actually need to think through what this looks like in your business and for your clients because that's when it's going
absolutely.
to actually work.
And where the timing is, right? The timing, because there are different triggers that do that. I always say this process, client experience has to be efficient and effective.
Mhm.
It can't be efficient. It's easy to send a bottle of champagne, but is it effective?
Right.
And what if it's effective, but it's difficult to do? We want to look at both sides of that. Yeah, I
Yep.
think that's super important. Okay, so let's talk about alumni.
Yeah. So the alumni stage is at the point where technically some people would make the argument, well, the client experience is done because the work is done and they're no longer a client. I look at it as it extends into their time as being an alumni. So yes, some people will call this previous clients or past clients. I prefer to call it alumni clients because I think when you call your clients alumni clients, you think of them differently. They don't necessarily have to know they're alumni clients. But the idea here is that the work touch points have ended. So you're not really marrying your relationship building touch points within the work touch points because all you have are relationship building touch points. So what I tell folks is this is where you just want to make sure that you are keeping in touch and staying top of mind with your alumni clients. And that is going to look drastically different for a lot of different businesses. How long you keep somebody and like how many years are they going to be considered an alumni client before they drop off has a lot to do with your volume and a lot to do with turnover. Like that matters, right?
Or your
Or how
product
long,
or your service. Yeah.
yeah, and how long you keep someone has to do with, well, is there a point in the future where they typically circle back, right?
Mm.
That matters too. Like as a real estate agent, right? If the rule of thumb that used to be is still true, that every 7 years is when people look to do something with their house, then maybe you need to make sure you keep your alumni clients for 7 to 8 years. So you're cycling back in that opportunity. It just kind of
Well, and
depends.
if you're a dentist, that looks different.
Yes,
You
very,
know,
very
you
different.
did the
Yeah.
work. Now don't expect them to just make an appointment.
Well, and so that's the thing about dentists, though. The idea is that they actually don't, it's the same thing with CPAs. When I'm filing your taxes I'm not a CPA, but using this as my example, if I'm filing your taxes every year, I don't ever want you to go to alumni client. A dentist never wants you to go to an alumni client. Some of us have businesses where the work ends and you will become an alumni client. Doesn't mean you can't come back around and be a repeat client. But for some businesses, you don't want them to become alumni clients, which means they stay in that active, ongoing stage. And that's really important for us to note because as you're cycling and paying attention to your clients, if they stay inactive and they become ongoing, you still have to make sure you're doing things year after year after year as part of that client experience. But when they're clearly done and you have 3 stages and they've moved to alumni, it's more about how you're going to be keeping in touch with those clients and staying top of mind with them. And maybe it is the holiday card that you do, but you can't just do one thing, right? Most people will say, I do a newsletter and they get it every month, right? And I'm like, great, but I know my open rates and read through rates, which actually you can't even really believe those
Or
statistics
zero.
anymore because of the bots, right? But
Yes.
the idea behind that is that's fine to have that as like I always send them a newsletter. Great. Are they even paying attention to it? We don't know. So why don't we show up with some variety and different ways that we know they're probably more likely to notice us and pay attention to us. And I don't mean like sending like really expensive magazines and things like that in the mail, but just showing up usually 4, maybe 5 times a year in a different way. But what that looks like for a business is going to be very different depending on what type of business you have. Are your people virtual? Are they local? What kind of budget do you have? And ultimately, what it looks like for you to be able to generate referrals. And so that's the other thing that people have to keep in mind. Like some people are like, hey, we like to do a client appreciation event. I'm like, great, your alumni client should probably be included. You're already doing it. You might as well include them into
Absolutely.
that.
I mean, when I think client appreciation, the first people I think of is my alumni.
Mhm.
The
Most
first,
people think about the people that are current clients.
I know, but I think of my alumni
Yeah,
first,
you should be doing
always.
both. Right.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Okay. So as we end our time together, and we could talk forever because I know you have hot zones. I was going to throw out some stuff here that people need to be finding in your book.
Yes.
Right. You have hot zones. Like when is that exact moment? When is the best moment? And testing that, testing it because you might think it's this, but it might be, 5 days later that it's that. That's part of it. And and learning about so here's the question I want to ask as we end our time together is, can you give us a short success story of someone who instituted this in and how it impacted them and their business?
Yeah, I think for some folks, when they're like going through this process of putting these things in place, the very first impact they have is that they feel tighter about the process that they have and they're getting feedback. The first thing you're ever going to notice is not necessarily the referrals that are going to come in from this perspective, but it's going to be the feedback that your clients share. Right. They'll start
Mhm.
sharing different things because they're going to have felt a different way. So that's the first thing I always tell folks to look for. And that's what my clients will share with me. They'll be like, oh, like I had one client that said, yeah, the communication that I started getting back from my clients after we made some changes is like that we had our communication on lock. Like they always knew what to expect. They always knew what was coming and they never felt like they were in the dark. I'm like, that is the first kind of feedback that they were looking for, that they were able to generate. And for that marketing consultant, it made the difference. They were like, oh, we made these changes and now we're hearing that feedback from our clients. I have another client who's a business coach, and I remember he was like putting things in place for his client experience. And he was like, I got my first referral from a client. Like it works. I'm like, yeah, because the client experience is going to be slower. And that's one thing I talk about in the book is that you've got to have the patience to put the things in place and then let it run. And it's going to be slower as you're bridging that gap to referrals. But when you think about the things that you talked about in the book that we kind of tackle in part 3, when you're bridging the gap to referrals, there's 3 areas we're looking at. It's the right people, the referral hot zones, and the right referral moments. And you got to understand all 3 for that to actually start generating referrals from that perspective.
Which you've got to get the book for. Yeah, which you have
Yeah.
to do. Okay, so I have some rapid fire things that I just want to do with you, and then we'll end our time together. One referral killing habit you would ban tomorrow for most business owners.
Asking people to refer you.
Okay, number one, right? Your favorite seed phrase. Favorite seed phrase.
Favorite?
Any pro can use today.
Okay, so oh my goodness. So favorite. That I hate that word because they're all my favorites.
Okay,
So the next time,
one that's coming up.
yeah, I got one. Here's the one that most people can use. The next time you receive a referral and you're going to write a thank you card, you're going to handwrite a thank you card to the person who referred you.
Let's
And
hope you're doing that first. Let's talk about that.
well, most
Please
people
do that.
aren't.
Please
Right.
do that.
What I find is most people aren't, but they should be. You're handwriting a thank you card. Instead of just saying thank you for the referral, I want you to use what we call the thank by name script, which is one sentence that is literally thank you for referring, and then input the name of the person they referred, because that is going to, in their mind's eye, immediately they're going to see the person they referred, which helps start the conditioning with the subconscious to what they've done and feeling good about doing it.
And doing it again, right? Doing it again. The smallest change with the biggest referral upside.
Oh, this one's not sexy. And people, I think, would think it would be something you should say or do. The truth is tracking. If you would just track what's actually coming into your business, those prospects coming into your business and where they are coming from, I will guarantee most people listening to this episode don't even realize the gold mine that they are sitting on, because they have people referring them and they're like completely ignoring them because they're not paying
They're
attention
not
to
doing
the people
anything.
who are
Yeah.
referring them. Yes.
I call that acres of diamonds, right? The acres of diamonds that are around there. Okay. A myth about referrals you wish would die.
So one of the myths that really, I mean, there's a lot that I really can't stand, but this whole idea that referrals fit in your prospecting activities or your marketing activities. And truly, actually, the way referrals fit and the way they work is it's the third leg to your sales strategy. You do prospecting, you do marketing. There's nothing wrong with those things. They're good, but you should have a separate third leg for referrals. And everything about that is how you treat it, communicate it, manage relationships differently. It's not a part of prospecting and it's not a part of marketing.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, and I love that you left a little bit of a cliffhanger there so that people have to get the book to find it out. I love it. And we'll have the link in the notes below for everyone to get this chapter. What's the name of the chapter you're giving away?
It's actually chapter 4. Oh, you asked me a question. I'm like, I don't know. I should know that. Hold on. I got the book in front of me. Chapter 4, it's part of part 2, and it's nail the new client stage. And there is one activity that when people do it, they're like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. And I really want everyone to do it in chapter 4 of the Referable Client Experience.
Yeah, and we're going to have that link in the show notes. So we'll
Perfect.
have that link there. Absolutely beautiful. Any last parting thoughts, any quote, any motto, anything that you would like to share with a business owner about business?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things you can be doing to generate referrals in your business, and you've got time to create and implement them all, but you cannot do them all at one time. So
Yeah.
just pick the next thing that makes the most sense for you, and start implementing that. So I always tell folks, I've got 20 different strategies. When a client works with me, they start with one strategy and then they go to the second one. They don't do 3 at the same time.
Yeah,
And
you
that's
can't.
really important.
Right. You can't, if you've never done push-ups, you can only do one. It takes some time to get to the 20,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah. And
definitely
so
does.
just take your time, but pick one and make it a priority.
Love it. I love it. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Stacey, for joining us again. And I know I'll see you in a year from now as well, and beyond the podcast, right? And all of you should go check that out on my YouTube channel. Go on over to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. I have all of my podcasts there, plus the Beyond the podcast, so you can see where are they now? What are they doing a year from now? We love that. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Stacey, and it's been a pleasure having you all listen in. Take some action on what you've heard today so that you can improve the goal. Number one, the growth of your company, the scale of your company, and improve those relationships so that you surround yourself with people that you have deep, rich relationships to help you move forward. And with that, I just want to say thanks for joining us again today. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us on Business on the Vine. If you found value in today's conversation and would like additional support, go to supportfromjen.com. Remember, the best ideas are always discovered on the Vine, so keep innovating, stay inspired, and continue to grow.